What if the place you call home suddenly turned against you? Imagine waking up to a notice demanding you strip away your cherished holiday decorations, your traditions, silenced by an overreaching HOA rule. Some rules are meant to keep order, but what happens when they go too far? Today, we're diving into a shocking story of an HOA that took its authority to an entirely new level, banning holiday decorations in the name of aesthetic consistency. But one homeowner refused to back down. What started as a simple disagreement quickly spiraled into a heated battle over personal freedoms, property rights, and even legal protections. The HOA believed they had the final say, but they didn't expect to face someone who knew the law better than they did. As tensions rose, fines stacked up, and legal threats loomed, this homeowner did something no one saw coming. He turned the tables and exposed the HOA's overreach in a way that shook the entire community. Stay with me, because this isn't just a fight over decorations. It's a lesson in standing up for what's right. In the quiet, picturesque neighborhood of Willow Creek, everything seemed perfectly in place. The streets were lined with neatly trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes stood in perfect alignment, and the houses, each painted in neutral tones, blended into a uniform suburban aesthetic. It was the kind of community where homeowners followed the rules, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The local HOA, a small but notoriously strict group, had made sure of that. For years, the HOA enforced an ironclad set of regulations covering everything from lawn height to acceptable curtain colors. Most residents, and either out of indifference or fear of hefty fines, chose to comply without question. But then came December, and with it, a rule that took things too far. The HOA had issued a new mandate. No holiday decorations were to be displayed before December 15th, and all decor had to be removed by January 1st. No exceptions. At first, the rule seemed like just another addition to the ever-growing list of restrictions. But for Daniel Whitaker, a longtime resident and devoted family man, it was personal. Daniel had always gone above and beyond with his holiday decorations. Every year, his home became a glowing beacon of festive joy, complete with twinkling lights, an intricately designed nativity scene, and a beautifully adorned Christmas tree visible from the front window. It was a tradition his family cherished, one that had been passed down for generations. So when Daniel received the HOA's notice in early November, warning that any decorations displayed before mid-December would result in escalating fines, he was stunned. At first, he thought it was a mistake. After all, his decorations had never been a problem before. But after checking with a few neighbors, he realized the HOA wasn't joking. Some residents were frustrated but unwilling to challenge the rule. Others, worried about retaliation, opted to keep their opinions to themselves. Daniel, however, wasn't one to back down easily. As a former military officer with a deep respect for personal freedoms, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a simple policy change. It was an overreach of authority, and he wasn't about to let an HOA dictate how he celebrated the holidays in his own home. Determined to fight back, Daniel took a closer look at the HOA's regulations. He combed through the bylaws, searching for any legal inconsistencies. What he found was surprising. While the HOA had broad authority over external modifications, there was nothing in the original community guidelines that explicitly banned holiday decorations. This new rule, it seemed, had been added without a formal vote, something that went against HOA procedural requirements. That's when Daniel knew he had them. What started as a simple dispute over decorations was about to turn into something much bigger. A battle over property rights, personal freedoms, and the unchecked power of an HOA that had ruled unchecked for far too long. Daniel knew pushing back against the HOA wouldn't be easy, but he wasn't prepared for just how ruthless they would become. Days after reviewing the HOA's bylaws, he decided to test the waters. He put up a single wreath on his front door, a subtle act of defiance against the unfair rule. Less than 24 hours later, a formal violation notice was taped to his door, citing his non-compliance with community regulations and warning of a $50 fine for every day the decoration remained. Daniel removed the wreath, but not because he was giving in. He had a plan, and it required patience. He filed a formal appeal demanding the HOA provide legal justification for their rule change. He pointed out that their own bylaws made no mention of holiday decorations and that any new rule required a vote from the homeowners, something that had never happened. The HOA's response was swift and dismissive. They claimed the board had executive authority to enact policies as they saw fit, and no further discussion was needed. That's when things started to get ugly. Determined not to let the issue slide, Daniel put his decorations back up, this time adding a modest string of white lights along his porch railing. Within hours, he received another notice, this time doubling his fine to 100 pars per day. He tried to reason with the HOA president, a notoriously controlling man named Richard Caldwell, but the conversation quickly turned into a heated exchange. "This isn't about Christmas lights, Daniel," Caldwell sneered. "It's about order. If we start making exceptions for you, where does it end?" Daniel wasn't buying it. He knew this wasn't about order. It was about control. Caldwell and the HOA weren't interested in fairness. They wanted obedience. And when Daniel refused to back down, they turned up the pressure. His mailbox was suddenly overflowing with warnings and citations. First, it was the decorations. Then, they claimed his trash cans had been left out too long on collection day, resulting in another fine. Days later, he was accused of violating the HOA's landscaping policy because his lawn had exceeded the allowable grass height. A blatant lie, as his grass was the same length as his neighbor's. It didn't take long for Daniel to realize what was happening. The HOA was targeting him, trying to break him down with relentless fines and petty infractions, hoping he'd eventually surrender. But they had underestimated him. Instead of backing down, Daniel went public. He reached out to his neighbors, explaining how the HOA was not only imposing unlawful rules, but also selectively enforcing them. Many were hesitant to speak up, fearing retaliation, but a few brave homeowners admitted they too had been unfairly fined over trivial violations. As word spread, more people began to question the HOA's tactics. What had started as one man fighting for his right to celebrate the holidays was quickly turning into a community-wide resistance, and Daniel was just getting started. Daniel knew the HOA wasn't just making up rules as they went, they were hiding something. And if he wanted to win, he needed proof. So he did what any determined homeowner with a background in law would do. He started digging. Late at night, he sat at his desk, sifting through pages of HOA meeting minutes, legal documents, and financial records that were publicly available but buried beneath layers of bureaucratic red tape. The more he read, the clearer the pattern became. First, he discovered that the HOA's recent rule changes, including the ban on holiday decorations, had never been properly voted on by the community. According to the bylaws, any significant change in the neighborhood regulations required a majority vote from homeowners, a vote that had never happened. The board had simply declared the rule and expected everyone to comply. But that was just the beginning. As he looked deeper into the HOA's financial records, Daniel found something even more troubling: a series of questionable expenses authorized by none other than Richard Caldwell. Thousands of dollars had been funneled into legal consulting fees and community maintenance projects that never seemed to materialize. When Daniel compared these records to past financial statements, he realized that the HOA's reserve funds, money collected from homeowners for emergency repairs and upkeep, had been steadily draining over the years, yet no significant work had been done to the neighborhood. It was a bombshell discovery, and Daniel knew exactly what to do with it. Armed with evidence, he called for an emergency homeowners meeting. At first, Caldwell and the other board members dismissed his request, claiming it was unnecessary. But Daniel had anticipated this, so he printed copies of the financial discrepancies and started handing them out to neighbors. The response was immediate. Homeowners who had once feared speaking out were now furious. Some had suspected the HOA of mismanagement for years but had no proof until now. Under mounting pressure, Caldwell had no choice but to allow a meeting, but he still believed he could maintain control. He walked into the gathering with his usual smug confidence, expecting to silence Daniel with legal jargon and intimidation. But this time, the power had shifted. Daniel presented his findings with precision, outlining the unauthorized rule changes, the misallocation of funds, and the blatant abuse of authority. Murmurs turned into outright outrage as homeowners realized they had been deceived. Then came the final blow. Daniel had contacted a local news station and an attorney specializing in HOA law. As the meeting escalated, a reporter entered the room, camera rolling. Caldwell's face paled. He had spent years ruling the community unchecked, but now the walls were closing in. And Daniel, he was just getting started. Daniel knew that exposing the HOA's corruption in a homeowners meeting was just the beginning. Richard Caldwell wasn't the type to step down quietly, and if Daniel wanted real change, he needed to take the fight to the legal system. With the support of outraged neighbors and a growing stack of evidence, he filed a formal lawsuit against the HOA, citing financial mismanagement, unauthorized rule enforcement, and violations of homeowner rights. Within days, the news spread like wildfire, and the local media picked up the story. What had started as a neighborhood dispute was now a full-blown scandal, with reporters eager to expose how a power-hungry HOA president had been illegally draining community funds and silencing residents. Caldwell, now backed into a corner, did exactly what Daniel expected. He fought back. He hired an expensive legal team, funded, of course, by HOA money, and tried to dismiss the case on technical grounds. His lawyers argued that the HOA had full authority to set and enforce rules, and that Daniel and his supporters were simply disruptive elements trying to undermine community order. But Daniel was ready. His attorney countered with a powerful argument. HOAs are not above the law. They must follow their own bylaws, and in this case, the board had repeatedly violated them. The missing financial records, the lack of homeowner votes, and the sudden enforcement of arbitrary rules all pointed to a clear abuse of power. The case moved quickly, and soon they found themselves in court. The room was packed, not just with homeowners, but with journalists, legal experts, and even representatives from HOA watchdog organizations. Everyone wanted to see how this battle would unfold. Daniel sat calmly as his lawyer presented their case, walking the judge through each piece of evidence. When Caldwell took the stand, he tried to maintain his composure, but under cross-examination, his carefully rehearsed excuses crumbled. Then came the breaking point. Daniel's legal team had subpoenaed financial records directly from the HOA's bank accounts, uncovering a direct link between community funds and Caldwell's personal expenses. The once confident HOA president stammered as the evidence was presented, a series of payments that had nothing to do with neighborhood maintenance, but everything to do with funding his lifestyle. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The judge's expression hardened. By the time the verdict came down, it was clear. The HOA had acted unlawfully. Caldwell was ordered to step down immediately, and the court mandated a full financial audit of the HOA's practices. Homeowners would now have a say in electing new leadership, and the unjust rule changes, including the holiday decoration ban, were thrown out. As Daniel walked out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed him, asking how he felt about the victory. He simply smiled. This wasn't just about winning a case. It was about proving that even in the face of unchecked power, one determined person could change everything. As the dust settled, the court's decision sent shockwaves through the community. For the first time in years, homeowners felt a sense of control over their own properties. The ruling was not just a victory for Daniel. It was a victory for everyone who had been forced to abide by unfair, arbitrary rules dictated by a corrupt HOA. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Caldwell, humiliated and legally disgraced, resigned from his position as HOA president. The court-ordered financial audit revealed even more mismanagement than initially suspected, leading to further legal action against him. Several of his closest allies on the board also stepped down, unable to escape the growing scrutiny. In their place, a new democratically elected board took over, one that prioritized transparency, fairness, and homeowner input. But the impact of the case stretched far beyond just one neighborhood. News outlets continued covering the story, using it as an example of what happens when HOAs overreach their authority. Other communities took notice, with some even revisiting their own HOA policies to ensure similar abuses weren't happening under their noses. Daniel's case had inadvertently set a precedent, sparking a wave of homeowner activism in other parts of the country. For Daniel, the victory was deeply personal. He had started this battle alone, armed only with his knowledge of the wing and an unshakable sense of justice. But by the end, he had an entire neighborhood behind him, proving that when people stand together against injustice, change is possible. Walking through the neighborhood weeks after the verdict, Daniel saw the signs of transformation everywhere. Holiday decorations were back, filling the streets with color and warmth. The once silent homeowners, fearful of speaking out, now gathered freely, discussing upcoming community projects instead of rule violations. A community that had once been ruled by fear was finally embracing a future of cooperation and fairness. Yet, Daniel knew that vigilance was key. He encouraged his neighbors to stay involved, attend meetings, and never let another caldwell rise to power unchecked. This wasn't just about fixing one HOA, it was about setting a new standard for accountability and fairness in community governance. As he watched a group of kids play on a lawn that once had an unauthorized use warning, he allowed himself a moment to reflect. Change didn't come easy, and it rarely came quickly, but it had come, and that was enough. Daniel had proven that one person could challenge the system, that a single voice could grow into a movement. And most importantly, he had shown that no matter how much power someone holds, they are never truly above the law. With that, he smiled, turned toward his house, and stepped inside, finally at peace in the home he had fought so hard to protect. Daniel's story stands as a testament to the power of resilience, knowledge, and unwavering determination. It proves that even in the face of corruption and unchecked authority, one person can spark a movement capable of reshaping an entire system. What started as a simple dispute over HOA regulations turned into a battle for fairness, justice, and the right to live without fear of arbitrary control. His victory wasn't just about reclaiming his own property rights. It was about holding those in power accountable and ensuring that no homeowner would ever feel powerless again. Through meticulous research, persistence, and the courage to stand up against intimidation, Daniel not only dismantled a corrupt leadership, but also set a precedent for others facing similar struggles. This story serves as a powerful reminder that change doesn't happen overnight, nor does it come without resistance. But when people refuse to back down, when they fight not just for themselves, but for those around them, real transformation becomes possible. The lesson here is clear. Never underestimate the influence of an informed, determined individual. Whether it's an HOA, a corporation, or any authority misusing its power, accountability is always within reach if someone is willing to take the first stand. So the next time you find yourself facing an unfair system, remember Daniel's story. Ask yourself, are you willing to challenge the rules, question authority, and fight for what's right? Because sometimes all it takes is one person to change everything. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, there's plenty more where that came from. The battle against unfair power dynamics isn't just limited to HOA disputes. It happens in workplaces, schools, and everyday life. And stories like Daniel's prove that standing up for what's right can lead to real change. So if you want to hear more incredible stories of perseverance, justice, and unexpected victories, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. That way you'll never miss out on our deep dives into real-life conflicts that shake up entire communities. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an unfair HOA? Maybe you faced an authority figure who thought they were untouchable, only for things to take a turn they didn't expect. Share your story in the comments below. You never know. Your experience might just inspire someone else to fight back. And of course, if you found this story compelling, don't forget to hit the like button. It helps more people find these stories and reminds us all that no one is ever truly powerless. Let's keep the conversation going, and I'll see you in the next one.